Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7. So again today we are taking a look at the Last Jedi novelization and things that we learned from the novelization that were not included in the movie itself. Or, in some cases, things that are neither explained in the movie or in the novelization. And that's right off the bat when Finn and Rose's shuttle is streaking toward the base on Crait. There's no explanation for why there are TIE fighters chasing this thing. And as far as the novelization itself goes, as far as the deleted scenes from the movie go, there's no indication that anybody has realized that, oh, hey, this shuttle that's flying away from all the disastrous results of Admiral Holdo's hyperspace maneuver, nobody's figured out that this shuttle is a traitorous shuttle, right? There's been no indication that anybody figured out, oh, that's FN2187 on there. Let's shoot that thing down. Same thing in the novel. It just shows up at Crait, heading for the base, and a bunch of TIE fighters are firing after it, but, to no avail. And it's able to slide in through the doors while, just like we saw it in the movie. With one exception, which is that Leia had been watching from the doors as the doors were going down and then moved away. But in the novelization, she asks Poe to come check the scene. And they are there for long enough that Poe has to dive for cover when the shuttle comes skidding through and gets the top wing sheared off. And it probably won't surprise you to learn that in the novelization, at least, Leia is the person who is described as first picking up a blaster and shooting at the shuttle before they figure out, oh, no, it's Rose and Finn and BB-8. So, I mean, she was shooting, but I think she came up behind Poe in the movie. But, that's good on Leia. It's how it should have been. She should have been the first one shooting at that sucker. Anyway, so they get situated. They figure out what kind of resources they have to deal with. That includes finding the ski speeders. They find that they got 13 of them, and they don't look very good at all. I mean, I guess there's been some modifications made to them that make them a little bit tougher, but they're still rickety. They're still old. They're not going to do very well with their cannons. The fire control linkages are very rusty, brittle. They're not going to work very well. So Rose has to tell everybody, listen, don't just fire indiscriminately. Like, you got to line up your shots if you're going to shoot at anything, and just be careful about what you're doing. And privately, before Leia shows up, at least, when Rose is expressing her dismay about the ski speeders, Poe has a great line. He says, yeah, it's like somebody knocked over a museum nobody ever wanted to visit in the first place, which I thought was really good. And then Leia shows up and has some words of encouragement for everyone and talks about the fact that Red Squadron, the very famous Red Squadron, used to fly those very same ski speeders while they had been discovered by Imperial scouts back in the day. And she had been one of the ones flying one of those ski speeders. And this goes back to that Crait one-shot comic book that came out a while ago. And everybody's kind of startled, like, nobody can picture Leia in the fight anymore. Like, this is how far away that time has gone. And Poe ends up following up with his own bit of inspirational speech. Yeah, Red Squadron flew these, and I remember hearing stories about Red Squadron back in the day, and I wanted to grow up being just like them and do amazing things like them. And, this may not look like much, but Red Squadron took out a Death Star. So let's go take out these First Order guys, because that doesn't seem nearly as daunting, which, it kind of does and kind of doesn't. And it actually kind of gets people, all right, like, maybe we can get a little fired up for this. Now, as far as planning the Resistance attack, the movie doesn't actually tell you that Finn plays a role in this. He is actually monitoring some of those working external cameras and trying to figure out what the First Order is putting on the ground and what their plans might be. And he's actually not familiar with the deployment of the siege cannon. As he's watching the tugs being lowered into place and seeing how things are laid out, he can't figure it out. It's not anything that he's ever seen before. But once the siege cannon suddenly gets dropped down into the picture, he goes, oh boy, we're in trouble now. And so that's how they find out it's this cannon with Death Star technology and whatnot. And so the plan, such as it is, because they don't know any better, is to stop the tugs that are pulling it or destroy one or more of the cables that the tug has attached to the siege cannon. That's the plan, at least. Now, I've read the Last Jedi visual dictionary and the Incredible Cross Sections book, so, you know, obviously it's a different story because I've seen the movie, so I know what happens. But even hearing it in the book and going, oh, but I read these reference books, like, the cables themselves are like 27,000 twines of, you know, some form of Star Wars type steel. Yeah, there's no chance. And as they are flying around, Poe is able to get some shots off with his ski speeder guns, but it's only able to scar the surface of the cable. It does no damage at all. And the tugs, like, there's no help with the tugs. I mean, they can try to shoot the tugs, but then the tugs have their own gun emplacements on them, and so it's no good. They can't do any damage to this thing whatsoever. Meanwhile, the TIE fighters are there for air support for the walkers and for the cannon, which it turns out they don't have to provide much because the ski speeders can't do anything to the cables or the cannon or the tugs or anything like that. And as the pilots of the ski speeders were briefed, they were told, stay on the ground because if you go up in the air, you're going to get sliced to ribbons by the TIE fighters. And yet, Poe once again defies he defies orders, defies his own orders, in fact, and kind of bounces a ski speeder up just a little bit in order to shoot down a TIE fighter. So he actually gets to shoot one down. We didn't get to see that in the movie. And yeah, then the Falcon shows up and all the TIE fighters go away and they still can't do anything. So thankfully the TIE fighters were unnecessary for the First Order's perspective because, yep, they can run their cannon and Finn tries to go right down the throat of it, but Rose slams her ski speeder into it and knocks him away from it, and that pretty much happens exactly the way that you saw it in the movie. And that is going to do it for the meat of the podcast here. Over in the audio version at sw7x7.com/iTunes, we'll talk a little bit more about the First Order perspective on this engagement, which there isn't a heck of a lot. And as you might imagine, it's rather dismissive to begin with. But there's some interesting stuff about the dynamic between Kylo Ren and General Hux in this moment. And like I said, I'll talk about that over in the audio version of the podcast. But for the video version here, it just remains for me to say thank you so much for watching. And may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.